I am Heaven Hope. Welcome to Conversations with Goddess. Are you ready to go down the rabbit hole? I hope you are, because my guest today is Betsy Chaucey. She is the award-winning filmmaker, best-selling author, change maker, mom, best known as the co-writer, director, and producer of the hit film, What the Bleep Do We Know?
It's very mysterious.
It's a question that we don't have a good answer to.
Well, that is the ultimate question.
Now, that is tricky.
The more you look at quantum physics, the more mysterious and wondrous it becomes.
The question is, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
She's authored multiple books, including Killing Buddha, Tipping Sacred Cows, and of course, What the Bleep Do We Know? So the question today is, what the bleep do we know? And what the bleep do we do now?
All of this really is just a great illusion.
Are people affecting the world of reality that they see? You betcha they are.
What is reality?
What is reality?
Have you ever thought about what thoughts are made of?
It is so mysterious you can't explain it.
The real trick to life is not to be in the know, but be in the mystery. Ponder that for a while.
We're going to find out about the behind the scenes of the making of that film, one of my favorite films. So I'm really happy to have her on the show. And we're going to find out what the bleep now. So welcome to the show, Betsy.
Thank you so much for having me.
My first question, and I quote your bio. How in the world did the least spiritual person on the planet get hired to work on What the Bleep?
It's a great question. You know, I think I always giggle because people get upset about the word God, and some people call it the universe and, you know, all this stuff. So I just call him Bob. I think Bob had a plan and dropped me in. I wasn't even really making movies at that time. I had kind of retired from making movies and had a company that made gourmet dog treats. A friend of mine, Mark Vicente, he's one of the other filmmakers. There's three: Mark Vicente, William Arts, and myself. Called me up and said, "Hey, we're doing this movie, and it's a super funny story. My life was kind of falling apart. I was breaking up with my boyfriend. Like, I kind of had sat down for the first time in my life, and my agent at the time took me to yoga class, which was kind of funny. And in the yoga class, the teacher said, this thing, you have to create intention, you have to really be clear and focused on what you want and what you're asking for. And so, make a list of what you want and focus on it and meditate on it. Well, I hadn't really ever meditated in my life. And, so I was like, but I'm good at making lists. So I went home and I made this list of all the things that I wanted in my life. And it was I wanted to move out of LA. I wanted to make a movie that would have an impact on the world. I wanted to get out of debt. I wanted to meet, my soulmate. There were all these things. So I just wrote them down, and literally within I got hired to make the bleep literally on September 11th.
Whoa.
This was a month before that. And literally within 30 days, all those things happened. I look back now, I'm divorced, but I have two great children from it. But yeah, it just sort of started plopping in. And one of the things that plopped in was I'd been offered two movies. I was offered to do this sort of softcore porny kind of movie in Puerto Vallarta or whatever, or I could do this movie that at the time was called Sacred Science. It wasn't even What the Bleep Do We Know. And for some reason, I took this weird documentary about metaphysics, and off we went.
So when you were offered, it was called what?
It was called Sacred Science at the time. It was a completely different movie than what we ended up making. Yeah, it was. It had a host, and it was just a completely different film.
How did it morph and transform into What the Bleep? And who came up with that title? Did you?
That was my title. Yeah.
I had a feeling.
I used to say, because here I am plopped to this spiritual world with Will, who was really like, he's a physicist, legitimately, for real, and science, and really on that side of things. And then you have Mark, who's sort of definitely spiritual and emotional, and then you had me, right? And here I am, just like, I don't know. And I used to say all the time, what the fuck do I know? But why does any of this matter to me? Because they would be off talking about all these subjects. And I was always the one going, but why does this matter to me every day? Like, why? Like, I don't understand how this is going to make my life better. Why do I care about, the double slit experiment? Like, why does this matter? So they would always tease me and call me what the bleep Betsy. And one day we should name the movie that. And they were like, we're not naming the movie that. And then it turned out we named the movie that. The other part of it was, there was this host. It's so condescending. You have this person, who's, I'm the host, and now I'm going to tell you everything. And as a storyteller, there's a big rule in writing and storytelling, which is that if it's too expositional, it becomes like too talky and too talking at. And so I kept saying, why don't we get rid of the host and make it a narrative? And for a long time, Will was like, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And then one day he came back, he's like, all right, let's do it. And so we got rid of the host. And then Will and I went and wrote the sort of narrative that happened, the Amanda story. And the Amanda story became, we had done all the interviews at that point, and we knew what we wanted to kind of conceptually say about the different things that we were talking about, quantum physics, molecular biology, neuroscience, how all of your physiology, like we knew what were the beats. So we just wrote the story of Amanda to really help the audience sort of understand it, not just from a like lecturer's perspective, but from like a real emotional perspective.
Now, water is the most receptive of the 4 elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a dark field microscope. This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here, or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
Really great that they actually had a woman on board to humanize that whole scientific sacred science storyline, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, I find myself over the last 20 years after making Bleep often I'm doing a project right now where it's all men and then me. And I don't know, I was raised with 4 older brothers, so maybe I know how to sort of be in the room with the masculine energy, but
what do you have in the way of tips as far as being in the room with all that masculine energy on a project?
I think for me, I match it really comfortably. Like, I'm not intimidated by it. And I'm also not intimidated by my femininity. And a lot of times people get very caught up in the goddess and the feminine and the masculine. And there are all these different archetypes that we all carry. It's not just men and women. These are all pieces of us, right? And so very comfortable sitting in a room with a bunch of men who were pushing out masculine energy, because I can match it with them, right? And I can be present with them in that space, doesn't intimidate me. And I know how to also stay connected to that feminine part of who I know I am and bring that to the table without having to feel diminished.
Okay, how do you do that?
I don't know.
You said you grew up with brothers, so that's helpful. You're very comfortable around being around a lot of male energy. And as the only girl, you have to sort of adapt. So how do you also manage to be in your feminine in those situations? I think that'd be helpful for the women listening.
I'm really comfortable with who I am. I'm really grateful that however my upbringing was that I was really taught like my personal values and ethics. And so that's a really good barometer for me. Anytime I'm in a situation, it really just doesn't boil down to right or wrong or masculine or feminine. It just really boils down to my own comfortableness of who I am. For a long time, actually, men would say to me that I was dating, "You're too masculine. You're too..." and it really actually bothered me for a long time. And I went through a phase, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, actually, where I was like, maybe I'm not feminine. Maybe I'm just too masculine. And I realized, a lot of the spiritual movement has got this notion of masculine and feminine completely wrong. We're still trying in a patriarchal way to make the goddess this like light and flowing and beautiful girl with the long earrings and the long hair, singing to her man and lifting him up, like all that stuff. It's all great. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But the feminine is actually really powerful and very strong and decisive. All the things that we've been told the masculine is where your decisiveness come from. Well, I don't care if it's my masculine or my feminine. I happen to be comfortable in that space. So I think that's part of it, is like just being really centered with who you are.
Feminine energy is really powerful.
Yeah.
And if you look at even in the animal kingdom, Mama Lion, you don't mess with her. Mother Bear, they're the ones who actually protect their turf, their family, and you just don't F with them.
Use what you've got. What are the strengths that I bring to this conversation? I build a team. I wrote a book called The Documentary Filmmaking Masterclass, and I talked a lot about your team building. Like, how do you build a really successful team of people? Bleep was made with 3 filmmakers. So that in and of itself, it can almost be impossible, right? 3 leaders trying to make one movie, right? And so how does that happen? And I think part of the reason it was so successful was because we each brought an element to the table. Everybody was very comfortable with what they were bringing to the table, and we respected the other elements. And that's really important when I build a team for any project, is not only to know what my strengths are, but what my weaknesses are, and to build a team where we can all sort of feed off each other, work together, and create instances where each one of us can thrive in our strengths.
What was everyone's role?
At the end of the movie, if you watch the credits, our names go around in a triangle and in a circle, and we called it the Tangled Hierarchy. And so Will and I wrote the Amanda characters. I directed and produced a ton of the animations. Will produced a ton and directed a ton. So we each had our parts and our moments. So I couldn't say we each had a job. I think it was more organic than that,
Whatever area you excelled at, relevant to you and your gifts, that's where you focus, right?
Right. And it just came out like that. Like, I remember just in even coming up with the character of Amanda, I came up with the character. Of course, she should be a woman. Why should she be a woman? Well, because we have all these mostly male scientists running around, and, we need to balance the energy there. And, I made the Bleep at a time when I didn't know that I wasn't even like masculine and feminine. What's that? I really didn't even know that. So just even look to Joseph Campbell or any of the great myth writers or storytellers. And, these are all tricks of the trade that I'd studied just because I was interested in storytelling. We just all showed up and where our strengths were needed in the moment. And it worked. People often come to me and say, are you going to make another Bleep? And I would go like, I don't think I can ever do that again. That was just a magical moment in time. Of course, I'm working on other projects. I think they're as amazing as the Bleep, but,
We're going to get to those, but first I'd like to ask you, what was your background in Hollywood in filmmaking?
I was a line producer for a good 15 years before.
Prior to Bleep.
Yeah. Typically, that's what I was hired to do on the original Sacred Science. I was hired to come in as a producer only to basically produce this script that they had written.
How did it evolve to you being one of the producers and a writer?
The line producer, one of your big jobs is you're in charge of spending the money. And, I took that very seriously, especially, a lot of times I was working for studios or production companies, but this time I was working with an individual, and it was his money, personal money. And I've just really honored and respected for me, when somebody puts something like that in your hands, at least for me personally, I take that very seriously. So I always had a list of questions that I would ask the financiers, because it was important. Like, what were their expectations? Because filmmaking, a lot of people that aren't in filmmaking look at movies and they have no idea what it happened to get that on screen, right? Mm-hmm. And so they have unrealistic expectations about how things are going to work out, right?
Right.
And so when I met with Will, excuse me, he said, I want 100 million people to see this movie.
What did you think when he said that?
I'll tell you, I looked at him because I'm just a really honest person. I just said, well, with this script that you have, 100 million people are not going to see this movie because it's really bad.
Ooh.
And at the time,
you just tell it like it is. Way to go, girl.
And it's okay if he wanted to fire me, that's like, I'm really okay with that. And it's funny, a lot of the spiritual practices that I learned were like spiritual things. I somehow realized that for whatever reason, I always just operated in that space organically already. I wasn't raised particularly spiritual. It just sort of was things that's just in my coding already about the way that I operated. One of them was like brutal honesty. And if they react and say you're fired, that's probably a good thing.
I really appreciate that about you, because most people have such difficulty being authentic, telling it like it is. But you'll find out right away how somebody's going to react to it. And you're going to find out, oh, is this a fit? We can work together. Cool. Otherwise, good to know right at the start, save everybody a lot of time, right?
Well, and I don't take a lot too personally, because I know that I'm a really good person. I make a lot of mistakes. I say the wrong things sometimes. I get mad or frustrated. I can be too direct. As I've gotten older, I've had to learn that, you can soften your language a little bit. When I was much younger as a line producer, believe me, I was, brutal sometimes. But, I tried, I also keep things very separate. Like, there's the project that I'm working on and the job that I have, but that doesn't define who I am as a human and an individual. And so I don't really take too much personally. And I also don't judge people too harshly. We're all just trying to figure this shit out.
How did you evolve as this kind of person who cannot take things personally? Because most people do, even though that's one of the 4 agreements. Not too many people have mastered that one.
And I haven't either. There are days where I go, oh, that actually hurt my feelings, but I do enough work. Part of my book, Killing Buddha, is a little bit of a nudge, wink, wink at the ridiculousness of the modern day New Age movement. We've sort of taken a really important spiritual concepts and just oversimplified them to the point that people really aren't doing the deep work that they need to be doing. And so that's part of what Killing Buddha is about in kind of hopefully funny way. And, for a long time, even after the Bleep came out, I just thought I was important and special, and I'm the girl that did all this shit. And I realized sometime, then I got divorced and my life fell apart. And I realized, I don't really know anything.
When did you write Killing Buddha?
I wrote that it started right after I finished the Bleep. I started working on it, but it came out in 2021.
What inspired you to write that book? Was it working on Bleep?
It's sort of fashioned around a character. It's a novel. It's a fictional book fashioned about what happens. A lot of it is my personal life story, but it's just sort of what happens when somebody from the outside gets brought into a world and sort of like from an outsider's view is looking at what is this spiritual journey and all these crazy things that people do in the name of getting enlightened, and what does that even mean? And what does that mean to me personally? And, I personally think that this is the plane of experience. you pop out of a hole or you get ripped out of a hole and you're like, here you are, have your life journey. Hope you learn a few things. You'll be coming out the other end and don't worry. And it's sort of like a video game. So for whatever reason, I realized that part of not taking things too personally is I know that I'm here for an experience. So I always operate from the like, oh, if my feelings get hurt about something, there's always a voice in my head that says, oh, that's interesting. Why is that happening? Where do you think that's coming from? Do you really need to get this upset about that? Because it's really not that important. And I've just, developed a relationship with that part of myself that checks in. And it's so much easier because most of the time I realize like, oh, wow, it's either okay, I was just a jerk and I need to go apologize because I was reacting or behaving from, not a cool place. So saying I'm sorry makes it a lot easier. And then, or I go, wow, this person is hurting and reacting from not a cool place. And so I actually don't need to take that off.
I have got to know, how much was the budget on that film?
Sure. So, okay, remember the Bleep was made on the cusp of the digital age. Okay. So we were actually analog and digital, which is strange. We're one of the few movies that was made during the both times. So the production budget was about $6 million, which in today's day, we could do it for way cheaper. And I think the marketing was another $5 or $6 million. And I believe it grossed worldwide something like 30 or 40 million.
Not bad at all.
I didn't get barely any of that money. So everybody knows, like nothing really in comparison, but it did well.
The person who financed it was one of the...
Will was the financer. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of stories about Rump that financed it and blah, blah, blah. None of that is true. It was made by Will and Mark and I, and Will financed it.
Got it. And that was my next question. Ramtha, did you have any affiliation with the School of Enlightenment or Ramtha?
Both Mark and Will were students of the school. And when I went there, I was a student for a little while. There was a lot of great information that I got from going to the first few retreats. But then after a while, it just became repetitive and it just became community and it just became like a thing. And I just kind of, the same can be said for a lot of other groups and cults and organizations. I think you get a lot of great stuff in the beginning. And then if you build community, as long as the community is staying healthy for you, it's great. Connect with the community. Unfortunately, a lot of these groups start out great. And then when you get deeper in, you realize, not for me.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Okay. Yeah. So to present time, you were telling me about a really great project. I think it's called BLISS UP.
It's called BLISS UP Energy, the Ultimate Healer. And, I'm super proud of this. It's not like the Bleep. We didn't have nearly the budget. Okay. So, not even 1/10 of that budget. But especially nowadays when there's so much polarity, us and them, you're either on this side or that side, or, and I just really wanted to create a series about what energy healing really is and how it really works from a very scientific perspective. Because I think there's a lot of people out in the world that call themselves energy healers that are doing a lot of harm. And I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from energy healing that don't understand what it is. So Energy, the Ultimate Healer, really talks about what is energy healing, how does it work, and interviews some of the best scientists in the world about the subject. And we really break it down for what it really is and how it works.
This is something that you did with Iram Saeed. Is that her name?
Iram Saeed. Yeah, it'll come out in April.
Okay.
In the US, I believe, and then in June it'll come out worldwide.
So this is actually a documentary?
5-part doc series, yeah.
Oh, cool. And where can we see it?
Go to blissupnow.com and you can sign up there. I believe she's releasing it through her platform.
Okay. So it would be online.
I wanted to make sure that we got it out to people because, again, me personally, any energy healer that tells you I'm going to heal your cancer is probably not the energy healer you want to be working with. Really good energy healers don't make claims like that. But we have some amazing stories of women and men who've had amazing healings and miraculous healings, all the way down to very simple things that energy can do, you can do, everybody can do to have a really positive impact on your well-being.
We're going to take a look at a little clip from Bliss
I
up.
felt like heat move through my body.
And I could start to feel a tingling in my hands.
My experience was going from a doctor telling me I need a liver transplant to I don't need a liver transplant. I did nothing else in that time besides the energy work.
Welcome to Bliss Up, exploring energy, the ultimate healer. I'm your guide, Iram Saeed. During this 5-part docuseries, we will talk with energy healers, physicians, scientists, and experts, and take you behind the scenes into actual healing sessions with clients so you can experience what energy healing is and what it can do for you. By the end of this 5-part series, you will have a good understanding of energy healing and how to become more empowered when it comes to creating and maintaining your own health.
This is something where people who watch the series can actually come away with some valuable tools and tips and insights for their own energy toolkit or their tool belt, which we really need these days in light of what's happening on the planet, right?
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the cool things that you learn about it, I was talking to a friend of mine who's an energy healer, and at first she's like, oh, I don't need to watch it. I'm an energy healer. I know all about it. I said, well, just watch it anyway. Just tell me what you think. She came back and she was like, oh my God, you just validated everything that I do. And you gave a whole new language. And like one of the things that she talks about is the Schumann resonance of the planet. We talk a lot about how the Schumann resonance of the planet, and that is actually a thing. And people always want to understand, well, what do you mean we're all connected and how does that work? And now we explain like how, when you rise up your frequency, you get into that place and you're actually bringing up the frequency of the people around you. And
absolutely. And it doesn't even take that many people to do that, right?
No, it's small. It's one person, with the people standing next to them. And so especially now, with everybody so divided and so on a side, I just really am trying to create content for people that says, look, we don't have to get caught up in that game. I have a funny saying, it's not mine, I'm sure I stole it from someone. It says, you do you, boo.
I love that. You do you, boo. I'm going to use that. I'm just going to steal that from you or whomever you stole it from. Okay,
as long as we're not causing harm to each other or anyone else on the planet, I don't care who you marry. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't really care what color your hair is, what color your skin is, whether you get the vaccine, whether you don't. Like, none of it bothers me. All I want to do is just say, this is where I'm at, happy as a clam, and live up to that higher frequency, because that's really what the world needs right now.
You do you, boo. I am definitely using that. So back to Bliss Up, right? That's a great title. So was that your idea, her idea?
I think she might have come up with that. Erin is amazing. I mean, talk about an inspiring, brilliant woman who's doing great work in the world.
Who I would love to interview on the show. Hint, hint.
She's amazing. And, again, all about lifting people up and providing information. We follow 4 different energy healers as they work with clients. And then we bring in the scientists. And then we also bring in people who've had different experiences with energy healing.
I came across some really cute, adorable, so Betsy like you do you, boo videos on a show called Life Unscripted.
Oh, yeah. That was a good old days. A long time.
What made you decide to do that?
I really wanted to make this kind of information accessible. That's my purpose. I'm doing a series right now called the Galileo Project. Galileo was basically shunned and shoved into a basement because he had the audacity to say all these crazy things, right? All of which now we believe are true. So that the more people, everyday people, understand the magical amazingness of their own capabilities and our world around us, it opens up their worldview bigger. And when you open up somebody's worldview and give them more of an expanded idea of how it all works, there's a much greater chance that they're going to be less in fear. They're going to be less aggressive. They're going to be more filled with love, and they're going to be more open-minded. And that's what we need.
Since this is Conversations with Goddess, I have to ask, what does the goddess mean to you?
The goddess, I'm a single mom. So it's interesting because typically, you know, in the world, there's always there's a balance of a masculine and feminine in the raising of a child. And I've had to embody my goddess and my warrior and my God and all the masculine and the feminine. And I'm raising kids.
May I ask, boy, girl?
Both.
One of each.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm having such a life learning. Woo!
Those are your spiritual teachers.
Darn straight they are. So, you know, what does the goddess mean to me? You know, she's sort of the side that I go to. She's actually one of my bigger champions. She's the one who says, don't worry, you got this. She's the one who, when I have a long day and I lay down in bed and I just want to rest or I want to cry, she says, let it out, baby. You know, she's the open arms, you know, she's the one who catches me, but she's also the one who kicks me in the ass when, hey, you know what? Not today, honey. Get out there and get moving. You know, to me, that's who she is.
So Betsy, this has been an awesome interview. Before we close, please let us know how people can find you.
BetsyChassie.net, which is my website. I'm Betsy Chassie on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. Although I don't TikTok very well, apparently, according to my children, but I'm going to try to do better. But yeah, Betsy Chassie, that's me.
On every show, I invite my guest to join me in an intention, which it's perfect for you, or prayer, which is perfect for me because I'm actually an ordained priestess. And working with the quantum, is there an intention that you would like to share with the viewers?
I think that I would just ask everybody to just take a breath and remember that we're all very much looking for the same thing: love, comfort, peace, safety, sustainability, and that we all have different ideas about how we might want to get there. But if we just take a minute, most of those ideas aren't very different. And most of the things that we've been told to worry about in terms of our differences aren't really that important. And if we could just come together and look at each other as mothers and daughters and sisters, aunts, uncles, brothers, and fathers, that we're all here on this great journey, and we can do things so much bigger and greater and more powerful when we're united than if we're divided.
Absolutely. I agree with that 1000%. So I thank you, Betsy, for being here. I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to hear your story and all your beautiful offerings. And in closing, I just want to say thank you to those of us who are remembering who we are and why we're really here, and that truly there really is only one of us here, and that's the intention that Betsy has put out there. So let us just align our hearts, our minds, and our spirits and know that each and every one of us, especially you out there, you are so, so worthy. You are so completely precious and loved and held in the heart of the mother. And just trust that all is well, you are well, and things will continue to unfold and go well for all of us. And if you got value out of the show, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And until next time, may the goddess bless you. And she truly, truly does.